You know that feeling when you see a totally fictional character and start to root for them? Yeah, good feeling. Good morning, you beautiful ladies and gentlemen. Angry Ducky here with a brand new Ducking Game podcast episode about, you guessed it, video games. Like we talk about anything else ever. It is a belated episode and I hope you can find it in your hearts just to roll with it and pretend that nothing happened. But anyway, video games are worth talking about, I suppose. After all, we are not getting into that lousy part where all PR stunts and marketing lies, that fearsome place where you are told that buying Skyrim or GTA 5 for 6 more years is the bare minimum you can do to support the million-dollar corporations that are basically starving. No, not at all. We here discuss gameplay, story, the premise, and all the things you will be left with even after 10 years have passed and everyone is melting under the new sun that is burning the planet down. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, right? Today, we are going to look at The Outer Worlds. Do you even remember this game? I sometimes forget it exists. I will not tell you what genre it is because it's not precisely a looter shooter, but it's not an RPG either. It's something in between. Like people developing the game couldn't decide for themselves. It has stunningly nice gameplay and graphics are okay. It's a nice and pleasant game all around, but it has one major flaw. It fails to make you care. Why should you even care about the game? I don't know. Maybe you have a different experience, but allow me to tell you how my experience went, and I'm sure I was not the only one with this experience too. We'll get to the core of it soon enough. There are characters in this game. In fact, there are multiple characters that you meet and that want something for you and from you, and it could have been a good start of some very good story. A story that makes you feel sad if the wrong character gets bad ending. But the Outer Worlds fail at developing sad characters. First person you meet, the one who saves you, the guy who looks like a dollar store discount Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty. Never before mentioned, Phineas Wells. He's not there for the most of the time. He's out in the orbit and he's locked behind the indestructible glass. It happens because developers need you to never ever kill Phineas. But placing him behind the glass scratches him out of the story. He's literally not there for any event. He's behind the indestructible glass of the plot armor. Possibly, you should have gotten the idea that the discount Rick is a good guy. I'm unsure really at this point. The game itself states that he's a wanted man, but he said that he wants to free people from the corporate overlords. He seems to have an agenda of his own, and he blatantly tells you that he's gonna use you to achieve his own goals. You, supposedly, have some interest in his goals too. After all, the whole beginning of the game tells you that the corporations left you floating in space because there were not enough jobs for all of you colonists to occupy. And it's supposed to have some meaning. Like we were supposed to be outraged by the actions of the corporations in the far future, right? They are already having no problems doing worse things on Earth. Why would anyone be bothered if they are going back in their old days in their distant future? I'm a bit lost in the opening cutscene already. What are we supposed to know about the world we are in? So far we know that there are corporations that mismanage all the resources, and we got a literal wake-up call from some dude. Phineas. What a way to establish a premise. Just bear with me here. I am not sure, but possibly the game is trying to tell you that it's super bad to to leave human resources out there in the space in the functioning ship and not dispose of them. Or maybe it would have been better to make them land, discover that there aren't enough resources for everyone, and let some of those people die. Probably in the Civil War, or maybe of starvation. You know, like in good old days, am I right? I seriously am a little bit lost here. The game starts to talk to me to transfer some messages, but I feel like they're trying to subtly communicate to me that evil corporations don't value a person's life. Okay, gotcha. Then how can we root for this discount Rick Sanchez if he doesn't value the lives of others too? He's not shocked, sad, or even disgruntled by the fact that your capsule diving from orbit killed his contact on the planet. He's considering the death of a person a nuisance. Does it mean that the game is trying to communicate that human life is precious but some are more precious than others? I have no idea, and you may see now why am I lost, right? The problem here is not the fact that Phineas and corporations are both not valuing human life. We are in the game where we can shoot more than several dozen people before breakfast, and it's possible only in the world where no one values life at all. But the real problem is that it's presented with an absolutely no care. It is completely unprofessional and, boy, this is handled even worse than in Bethesda's Fallout. Seriously, the presentation of the Borderlands was more engaging and more layered. Obsidian, who tried to brag that they have created the best Fallout since Interplay Death, could not make a proper start of the game. Could not even make it an RPG, they had to make it a looter-shooter. But okay, never mind. Every time you start telling someone a story, you paint your characters the way you want them to look like. You paint the conflict the way you feel like. And in the end, if you are a good storyteller, listeners will remain with the knowledge of who they would root for and what was the whole problem to spawn the conflict in the first place. And that is where both Bethesda and current time Obsidian both fail. They can't use the ways of storytelling to establish anything. They can only use the most broad strokes, showing you that people are bad because they do bad things. Cool, isn't it? How about learning the motives of those people? How about learning why good people didn't do bad things? Nah, too complex. Just trust me, these peeps are bad, okay? And that's not the way to tell a story. And the Outer Worlds can't completely tell a story. When you are supposed to get in touch with one of the main characters in the game, the one who rescued you, it's supposed to be the time of revelation, some motivations for corporations, for Phineas, for you even. But nope. Apparently, it's not really a well-written character. It's not even a side character. He mostly feels like yet another NPC, rather than one of the main forces in the system. How can you tell that Phineas is a character that has the same goals as you do? You have no idea. He seems to be quite preoccupied with his own life in the space station surrounded by robots and genetically modified pigs, of course. He doesn't bother to get you to help him. He is there to give you exposition, kind of like Preston Garvey, who's there to give you the next settlement quest and not to help you, not to aid you in your quest. He doesn't care about you, which could be a quirk for a character, but he really doesn't care about anyone in the galaxy. And it could have been a little trait, it could have been, but again, he is the one who is telling you about how corporations run the colonies to the ground and how they are bad at managing tasks. Yes, all of that tells you the man who mismanages everything so much that he locks himself up in the indestructible glass room on his own station. I know that Rick Sanchez is a role model for a lot of edgy teens. but it's not a good idea to add him as one of the main NPCs in your game. It already feels a little bit disingenuous, and we just started the game. But let's go further. When you meet a good antagonist or concealed antagonist, they don't start showing off how they are not any better than the ones you are going to fight against. You know, usually before betraying your trust, they have to earn your trust. In the Outer Worlds, narration does not care if you like Phineas or if you are suspicious about him. It does not care if you are interested in the corporations and how they manage their colonies and research facilities. Any of that. All of the information is not presented to you in any way, it just appears. And it appears quite like in real life. Quick! Imagine that McDonald's have been exposed for firing their employees for no reason. Do you care? Well, you kind of do. I mean, we all do. But you need more info, you need more of that story before you start cursing at the McDonald's, burning it down, or maybe siding with it. We don't know anything about it. But the Outer Worlds doesn't care. Here is your Outer Worlds experience. You have some fact about the corporation and its workers. You have no idea who to side with or even why is it even a conflict. Then you learn that the both sides have very selfish and misanthropic reasons to wage this war, and who do you side with? I don't know. And that's not something that will be explained later. It is never explained, and you just need to choose the side because you have to. Do you remember that part of The Witcher where he told there is no such thing as a lesser evil? This thing, the whole game, asks you to side with the lesser evil. Choose yourself. But enough of that. Let's talk a little bit about the game the Outer Worlds tried to put to shame with theirs. Let's talk a little bit about Bethesda's Fallout. In Fallout 4, the game that is supposed to be inferior to the Outer Worlds, if you play along with the Brotherhood of Steel, you can't help but to like and respect Paladin Danse. He is one of the most faithful and loyal to the cause. He is always there to talk, and he is doing what he believes is right. He genuinely believes he's doing the better thing. Is he working with people who want to eradicate everybody who is not human enough? Yes! Do you like the faction? Actually, it depends on you. But liking Danse is not optional. He is what a knight in shining armor should look like. Yes, he can be on the wrong side, yes, he can be on the right side, but he is the knight in the shining armor. And you have to admit that. So when the certain quest happens and you learn that Danse is a synth, or when you blow up Pridwen, you don't want to fight Paladin Danse. You know that he is an enemy after a certain point, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want to harm him. This is how character becomes meaningful in the game that is a poor RPG. But it's understandable. Danse has some screen time and he's out there in your party, and we are supposed to talk about NPCs who are not in your party. Okay, let's consider Sean, your son. And I'm using this term quite loosely. He's a jerkface who is manipulating the Institute, and he is a likable character. Of course, he has his own agenda. The whole Institute has its own agenda, and they don't even consider synths as anything more than a toaster. Yet he's a likable chap because he's presented well enough, like a human. He has flaws, he has strengths. He is not telling you that you are supposed to kill all the Brotherhood and the Railroad. He's making sure you like it in the place he's running. First and foremost, he does some representation of the Institute. He makes sure you have time to look around and get a good feeling of it. He's always there to talk, and although he does have his own reasons to be patient with you, he is not making it your problem right away. He has a good presentation. period. You don't feel like he was dumped on you to make your life harder. The meeting with him becomes more natural, and going for the Institute or against them becomes more of a choice. More of a choice of going for or against that character and everything he values, and not the Institute as the soulless corporation. Want some more? Okay, Dima from the Far Harbor DLC. He is controversial as ever. He killed people and synths alike. He infiltrated the local community. To be fair, he is not remembering any of that, but he is willing to take responsibility, because he knows that actions have consequences. This thing alone makes him a character worth thinking of. And all of those characters were presented to you fairly early in the game, so you can have time to think it over. Even Dima is presented in the earliest stages of the DLC. While the Outer Worlds usually presents you with a character, dumps exposition on you and makes you decide if the character is good or not. Take Adelaide, the one who is leading the deserters from the cannery in your very first encounter with the corporation against the rebels. She is a character who has very solid presentation and about 15 minutes of screen time. She is quite sinister. She makes you feel like you are going to be doing a good thing, depriving corporate cannery of the power source. But she's not doing it because she cares, no. She's doing so because she has a personal vendetta with a manager of the cannery. You don't really know that before you decide their fate, but I must admit, that was a character with some presentation. And of course, since we are talking about the Outer Worlds, you can either choose to help the deserters or make them return. Because in the real RPG with meaningful choices, there would have been at least 3 options. One of them being force them to cooperate by antagonizing yourself and making them both deprived of the power source. I don't know. That's just a thought. It's not a hard thing to make, but it's a meaningful one. Force everyone to re-establish the communication, force leaders to forget their personal gains, and actually do something about people they're responsible for. I would consider it a bad choice. But it's a choice that will not just color your end credits differently, like in Mass Effect 3, but it will be the choice that will show that you are here to make things work. And in this case, your own choice to ignore the cost of the decision will make you closer to understanding the reasons behind Phineas' choice to remain as far from people as possible. You see how it goes together? Phineas could even go on a long dialogue with you telling you that you are not making any friends, but they will live on. And a lot of other chemistry between you two. There could be, but they decided to exclude that. But okay, enough about that. Let's go for another character. You would not believe me, but the next time you see a good character is going to be on your next location. The space vessel that brought the first colonists in. The vessel is just drifting in space and inhabited by people who don't care for corporations, but who have to deal with them because they enjoy continuous uninterrupted living. The vessel has pirates, black market, and the embassy of the board, i.e. corporations. There is a mechanic there. She has a crush on one of your companions and you can help them get along. And this quest is good. It is a very good quest. It helps to develop both of them characters. And it's nice to see someone who is not there to fill in the part where something on the station is presented, but the part where people are still acting like people, like they should, you know? But it's not for long. Next time you visit a place, it never has anyone sensible. Even the planet with the colony that is battling the space communists is no better. Space communist leader is responsible for mass killing of wealthy people. Is he a good person? Well, his comrade thinks that not worrying about people dying is a bad thing. And I must say, I do agree with her. It's not something every one of us likes to see in their leader. The willingness to send you to die. And you can't plot against this guy with the lieutenant. You have to choose a jerk face that is never worried about people dying and is a space communist, or a corporation manager loser who only wishes to get more corporate ranks. Good choice, eh? Just like the choice in the first planet, both of them are bad. There could have been a way to make a third decision too. Again, I'm taking this from the top of my head. Example, kill both leaders, discreetly. Make their lieutenants in charge. Wait for them to cooperate because both of them are smart enough with some real heads on their shoulders. Why this thing is not a choice? Whatever. But this is the outer world and it's not giving you this option. Amazing, isn't it? And I cannot emphasize this enough. This is the game that was supposed to have better RPG elements than Fallout 4. That's what was promised, and that's where the game flops. They can't make you care about the characters they created too. I don't care if the corporate drop-off gets his butt reinstated on the seat of the board, because I don't know him. He wasn't properly presented. I know what he stands for. He stands for his own ranks, and that's it. I don't care if the murdering space communist prints enough leaflets. They both mean nothing to me. I know nothing about them both, and I have no time to establish any disposition towards them. Because for that, the characters have to act like humans. There you go. In the looter-shooter like Borderlands, not caring about any character is completely fine and normal. They are there to make you have fun and shoot much, not to make you feel sorry for them. But even then, Tiny Tina has more personality than all of the Outer Worlds cast I have seen so far. That is not okay. That should not be okay. It should not be fine for anything. And if any company should get shafted for under-delivering with any promises in their game, it's going to be CD Projekt Red, of course, for their Cyberpunk 2077, but the Outer Worlds should be on the list too. This is the reason I'm trying to ignore all the hype and all the promises the marketing teams make. There is no such thing as good company making good games. There always has to be a good producer understanding the game and how the game is made, who can present it, who can talk with people about money. There have to be programmers who make sure their game is done. There should be testers to make sure the game is playable, and the narrative designer who knows how everything should work. How to make people care for characters, how to present the world, the factions, and how to make sure players don't drift away just clicking the good decisions of the dialogue or just bad ones. Obsidian did not have a good narrative designer. Well, at least they didn't have it while they worked on the Outer Worlds. They had one when they worked on Tyranny. But then Chris Avellone left. Obsidian was left with nothing. And after the allegation that Chris is a degenerate, they didn't hire him even as the expert in the narrative design, which is exactly like shooting yourself in the foot. But whatever, I'm not here to discuss the allegations. But if you know, you know. All I know is that Chris Avellone can make a very good narrative. He made you care in the Tyranny. He made you care about the outcome. He presented the story so well that you had your options in the very beginning. He made it clear that you had several ways of approaching the situation, and none of those ways was making you choose lesser evil. You cared about the outcome and you had to choose something, or alternatively, everyone would have died, including you. Seriously, if you want to have a good narrative, try Tyranny. If you want to have some other good narrative, try Wasteland 2. Or if you want to have a narrative and the first-person perspective where you can shoot people and have fun, get yourself Cyberpunk 2077 and call it a day. Even though the narrative in Cyberpunk is far from perfection, even though it's barely playable on release, even though the patches did not fix enough yet, The narrative design in Cyberpunk is still better than the Outer Worlds. And I am not kidding, God, I wish I did. It is better. That's because there was a narrative designer, or a couple of them, or several of them, or a dozen of them, but they were working their fingers to the bone. While the Outer Worlds is one of the trends in gaming. People can be persuaded to never mention a story by a solid gameplay and a pretty visuals. And I'm not going to get tired telling you that story-rich games should feature a rich story. Surprising, I know. But anyway, all I want to say is character development requires some work with the presentation, story elements, visuals, and voice acting. Making those characters complement your story is even harder. This is where we get ourselves some voice acting. Voice actors, sometimes they're really good and just make the characters shine, like Jackie Wells from Cyberpunk 2077. Or they can get tired while recording 1,000 lines and some of them will be less believable, like Johnny Silverhand in Cyberpunk 2077. What was happening in the Outer Worlds? Voice acting is passable. Voice acting is nice even. But the lines are not from the real believable people. Real people usually don't disregard the most unusual and unexpected events in their life. But this is what characters do in the Outer Worlds every minute. The most unusual event is always just accepted, with no troubles at all, and mostly no comments ever. I can believe people being worked so much they don't have much extra time nor energy to mention anything around them. And in this case, they should work. And work a lot. Constantly even. They need to have reason to be overworked. You need to see that. Standing around and chatting is not work. No one makes any actual work in the Outer Worlds. Well, except robots. Robots do work. Robots are Employee of the Year. Everyone else is standing around and no one operates machinery. No one fixes the robots. They don't look at them. They are overworked. And in this case, the corporations are evil because... I still have no idea. Nothing adds up. Then again, maybe I am too strict. Let's give them a benefit of the doubt. We don't see them overworked because we don't see those who are overworked. But that raises a question. Why Phineas exists? If the corporation can make people work till they drop dead, why no one can search for Phineas till they drop dead? I am not the narrative designer. I don't have to fill the holes I see in the world construction, in the world creation. Either I don't need to see the holes, or I need to have a believable and easy explanation. Everything else is not enough and should not be accepted as a good story. You know what? I make sure to make the story the main focus of every game that claims to be story-rich. And sometimes I feel like I'm in the minority here. Developers and publishers are trigger-happy to butcher the story to have some cool camera shots or some crazy cutscene they already showed at some conference. I have a feeling that people need to learn to appreciate a good story and a good character development. Just a tiny little bit more than cool new graphics with 100 more shaders per scene. Learn to appreciate good story and good characters, please. We don't have enough of that right now. We can have a solid gameplay with some effort as Valorant showed. We can have a new, better graphics with no trouble at all. But we can't have a good story by the snap of the fingers of some CEO. And sadly, the recent Cyberpunk release showed it very well. So much time has passed and I still consider Cyberpunk a recent game. Wow. I'm old. And I know that we can have those stories, and we can have the characters that will not leave you indifferent, because we already have those. You thought about Last of Us, right? Try something really touching. Witchers from 1 to 3. Gibbous, a Cthulhu adventure. One Shot. Wasteland 2. Kathy Rain. Return of the Obra Dinn. The Night of the Rabbit. Night in the Woods. Machinarium. Arcanum. Tyranny, Deus Ex, ton of them, and all of them are having one thing in common. They don't make the story more stupid for the sake of making a pretty cutscene, nor for the sake of making some character developments. Stories there are well paced and never throws you too many reasons to disbelieve it. The characters there are developed throughout the game. It's not like they stop everything to have some character development. Those games don't do anything AAA publishers consider character development, and they succeed where AAA publishers fail. People like different things in life, I know it. Some like rich and believable stories, while some require soap opera writing of the reboot of Tomb Raider and Horizon Zero Dawn. Some people want to see the character development, and some are fine with a bare minimum character exposition of The Last of Us. I can only wish the gaming industry would stop congratulating itself on reaching even more mediocre level of storytelling by not granting any rewards to people who try and work hard for their product to have a good story and a character development. But that's utopia. And all I can really hope for is more people discovering that the story in video games can be more than just a dumb soap opera writing. There are good games out there, and no casual gaming news outlet will tell you about them. But there are people who will. There are people who are willing to give you advice, and the more you discover, the more you develop a taste. The higher your bar for the next project will be, and there will be less chances you will praise the next Battlefield and FIFA storyline. And of course, I'm using that very loosely. I guess it's the thing I cared out from the Outer Worlds, and it's not because the Outer Worlds is a bad game. No, it's mediocre. It's going to fall into obscurity even faster than Fallout 4 because it doesn't have any memes attached to it. Did Obsidian teach those Bethesda wage slaves how to develop a proper RPG? Gods, I hope not. Will I replay the Outer Worlds again? Maybe. I sure hope I will. When I am nostalgic for some Borderlands without any Borderlands attached. But that's all I had for you today. That episode might have been a little less funny than usual, but what can I do? Some games do be like that. If you feel like it, share this episode with your parents, family, and other members of our benevolent corporations. Huge thanks for the Patreon supporters. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do these episodes. And you can also become one if you feel like it. Don't forget to throw your questions at me. Somewhere in the comments or at mrangryducky@duckersy.com, or I don't know, find me on Twitter at Ducky_angry. Or alternatively, join the Discord. I will throw the link in the description. Meanwhile, stay tuned for the next Duck and Games episode. Until then, duck off.
By the Emperor and Superior Firepower, Duck in Games podcast is a part of Geeks Arising Network.